to video. Is that working okay, Owen?
It's playing, but there's no sound to it.
That's okay. There shouldn't really need to be sound because I'm going to talk over this anyway. It's just music. So this is very much a visual thing, just to give people an idea of the sort of rules there is out there. So it's quite a quick video. It's only a few minutes. This is for Mana Community Transport. This is providing volunteers provide a service to take people to and from appointments. We actually provide a similar service in Belfast, and there's lots of community transport type volunteering roles out there that do need support at this time. This next one shows a men's shed, and whilst they would call themselves members, they do some volunteering as well. So they will fundraise and they will have committees and so forth, and they're a very good support to men. This is Home Start, and this is a lady who's a volunteer providing a bit of support to a young family. So whenever they're out and about, going on trips and things like that, providing that bit of social support for the parents and the children. This is a young volunteer. This is Resurgam in Lisburn. And it's to show that, yes, young people do volunteer as well. Age sometimes can be a barrier, so youth clubs are a really good way for getting people involved in volunteering at a young age. Next one you see here will be Saintfield Development Association. And they have allotments, things like that, but they actually look after a lot of the public areas with the council. So they're not replacing council staff, anything like that. They're complementing the role that the council has responsibility for. And this is a really nice group called Incredible, and they are a social enterprise, and they have really, really nice chocolates. So what they're doing is they provide support for and employability support for people with learning disabilities, and that's their own business. The profits as a social enterprise are then pushed back into the organization. Some of you might have heard of Crew's bereavement support. So they have volunteer counsellors who will provide that support to people who feel they need it after a bereavement. This next one is Antrim Castle Gardens, again, supporting the council who have responsibility for the area, but they are, as you can see, helping to tidy up and again, making use of the shared space there. Very familiar to everybody will be food banks, and they do enjoy a lot of community support. It's a very well-known volunteering role out there. And this next charity are called Rosie's Trust, and they provide support to people who are very ill, maybe undergoing cancer treatment, and supporting the people getting treatment to stay together with their pets. So they volunteers who will go out and they will take the dog on walks and things like that. So it's a good variety there. I'm going to just share my screen back in here again with a presentation that is going to keep me right. Sometimes I waffle on without a lot of structure. So what I'm going to do is just again share my screen, and you give me a nod if you can see this, Owen. Here we go. Okay, so that was just a very quick overview of some of the roles there. It's good to have that sort of visual impact of volunteers and what they do in the community, because there's so many services that just wouldn't exist without them. So in terms of who I am, I'm a volunteer and support officer with Volunteer Now. We're a regional and local organisation. We promote, enhance and support volunteering by doing lots of promotional campaigns on the radio just yesterday, and a couple of days ago. We had our chief executive who was talking about why people should get involved in volunteering and thinking ahead for the new year, new changes, things like that. There's always a bit of a drive as volunteering, seen as one of those good things to start doing. We've various ones throughout the year, as I mentioned. The Volunteers Week would be the biggest one, where we would provide a lot of support to organisations with resources and talks and thank you events, things like that will help them plan them. And those other campaigns can be sporadic as well. We get involved, and if organisations are looking to drive volunteer numbers, we will provide that support too. We also support members of the public to find volunteering opportunities, so a very good resource. Our website is one of the main ways that people would get involved in volunteering if it's new to them, and we can provide that support by helping people to apply for roles. I'll show you that later on, but through ourselves we can meet with people who maybe want to discuss what volunteering they would like to do. They would get in touch with us at that email address you can see there, and I'm sure this will be sent later on as well. So that can take a bit of time. There's no pressure. We just we tell people about what opportunities are there, and then it's up to the person to take that sort of next step and get involved with an organization. And probably less relevant today is the training and information governance support that we provide to organizations. So that would be like volunteer management training, a lot of safeguarding training that we do, and various other sort of inclusion sort of campaigns that we would help organisations to, to learn more about how to appeal to find new volunteers, how to support. So really around volunteer management, safeguarding is our main thing. Oh, I should have gone to the current slide here. There we go. So what is volunteering? There is a definition, and it is quite clear. Sometimes it can feel a bit loose. There are different types of volunteering. There's informal volunteering where you're really just supporting somebody outside your family. You know, it could be picking litter. It could be doing messages for an elderly neighbor, checking in on them, things like that. Would be informal volunteering, and there is some research on that. I can send that with this presentation around what that looks like in the community. For us, our main focus is the formal side of volunteering. So in terms of volunteering, there should always be a benefit of the society and the community, the environment, or individuals outside or in addition to one's immediate family. It's always unpaid, although slight disclaimer, you can get expenses back, but you shouldn't financially benefit from volunteering and undertaken freely and by choice. So that's very important too. There's no contract in place. There's no obligation, really, is the main thing there. And there are examples in law of where that's been challenged and some bad practice that has sort of let slide some of the standards and people have felt compelled to volunteer. That should never be the case. And that's just, on this point, this is where we sometimes find up a little bit of resistance because the likes of placements and things like that wouldn't be volunteering. Work experience, it's not volunteering, it's something else, and that we don't really get involved in that side of things, although we naturally enough we have some knowledge of the differences. So as I say, the formal or informal side of things, I mentioned that sort of loosely. The formal side of things will always be with an organization or a charity or a community group. You wouldn't be totally on your own the way an informal volunteer might be. And a lot of people don't even consider themselves as volunteers if they're doing something informally. So it can be ongoing or ad hoc. So a lot of people would commit a lot of time and energy for an ongoing role. They may be doing it years or decades. They would have a set routine. Ad hoc roles would be the likes of us who provide events volunteers. That would be and maybe 3 or 4 times a year you could pick and choose what you want to do. You maybe join that organization for one particular event and off you go, and you never hear from them again, but you've enjoyed that time and that experience. So you can volunteer as an individual or a group. So some examples of group volunteering might be through workplaces. So we would help facilitate, we would call employer supported volunteering, whereby there would be a corporate social responsibility policy in place or something similar, whereby staff are released for 1 or 2 days throughout a year, and they do something like maybe go up to Belfast Castle and pick up litter for the day. Other ones I've done sort of gardening, could be like painting in the community centre, things like that. That is organised either through your HR departments or a manager, either independently or through an organisation like Volunteer Now or Business in the Community. Or it could be as a team of friends as well. So it could be just you've seen something that you like, you want to volunteer at an event together. Largely, you would be in a group setting in that case. People might not know an awful lot about virtual volunteering. I mean that is here to stay, and it's become very, very popular since COVID. And that is where you don't need to be on site. You're never on site. It might be remote roles, and there might be some roles that have been virtual since the beginning. Like a board member role, maybe doesn't specifically have to be anywhere. Can join meetings virtually and things like that. There are lots of roles out there, especially on our website. Particularly the likes of social media type roles are proven very popular at the moment, because organisations can't afford to employ the expertise to raise their profiles. So volunteers are a very good way of doing that. But in person kind of speaks for itself. The likes of your food bank, you're doing a shift at a certain time, and you've got support from staff on site. So this list here, I'm not going to read it all out, but that just goes from A to D. The sort of things that people get involved in. There's any number of specific examples in there, and volunteering can be as wide, if not wider, than the world of paid work. So there are hundreds, thousands of roles that are out there at any given time, and it's always a very good time to volunteer. There's never a bad time. People always feel that the time that they give um, is one of the main aspects. One of the main things to think about whenever they get involved in something. But if you see the different categories, I think it's sort of helpful to try and narrow your search a little bit. So in terms of what people get out of volunteering, these are the main motivations, and I think motivation is the most important thing. Um, Once you start a role, or once you get into a role, there is there's certain responsibilities on the individual to keep going, but there's also the organization to keep you happy, give you good feedback and things like that. But the main thing is for people to get involved, that altruistic, that to improve things, want to help people, and that is the most important reason why people continue to volunteer, what motivates them to do it. And certainly with causes as well. I've worked for charities who have specific causes. So I worked for Alzheimer's Society for a number of years, and the volunteers, nearly all of them, did that because the cause was really important to them. They had personal experience. And having said that, some didn't, and were just really interested in learning more about dementia and being helpful. And of course, the next thing people think about is the time that they have to spare. So it could be a couple of hours a week, a month, or a year. Sometimes volunteering is seen as this massive commitment, but organizations realize that they need to be flexible and work it around you. So that's what you will find if you do want to get involved. That's one of the main things that they will try and determine what your commitment level might be. And a need in my community. So for instance, later on today, I'm going to a church on the Shankill Road, and they are running a community program, and we're going to do some mobile volunteering. The organisation there has identified a need around the cost of living crisis to help improve people's awareness. They're going to be using volunteers to improve people's awareness about different services out there. So that's just a very recent example of identifying needs in the community, and very often you'll have people who decide to set up these services, and they do it as volunteers. They set up these organizations as volunteers, and they're entirely volunteer led. And friends, family did it and recommended it to me. So word of mouth still is the main way that people get involved in volunteering. We would like to think that we're up there in terms of how we get people involved, but it is that word of mouth that continues to be the most effective way of people actually deciding to take the plunge. And you can see just a few quotes there. These are from people that we've canvassed in the past, and there would be very common responses. So improving the CV gives me opportunity for work later on. That is something that I would see very often, and a lot of the groups we go out to that has that employability element to it. A lot of organizations we work with, volunteering is seen as this very good thing for people to do because it helps them change careers or for career development. Actually, is worth mentioning here. Those that maybe want to get ahead, want to get a promotion, volunteering can be excellent to use as examples. Real world sort of fleshing out who you are as a person in your own time, giving up your own time voluntarily for your career development. So it could be you join a board, you join trustees, or you just do something interesting at the weekend that helps others. Building up confidence, certainly a thing that we would see very often as well. Sometimes people decide to volunteer when they're quite a low ebb, and they realize that it'll be good for structure, good for meeting new people, forcing yourself to just push a little harder and learn new things. And certainly in communication skills is one of the things you'll always feel a benefit of whenever you volunteer. Okay, so just touched very briefly on employability there. It's career development is one of the things I mentioned, but also for sideways moves as well. So very often we've met people who have an eye on doing something different, and they might not be ready to go straight in there to do it as a professional. And volunteering can be a very good way to gain real world experience, contacts, and understanding of a sector or an industry that you haven't tried before. But there should always be element of learning new skills. I suppose the only exception to that would be if you're just doing something as a one-off and you're not really learning anything. But very often, any time spent with volunteering, you'll be put through sometimes a training program. You'll be shadowing. You'd be maybe actively thinking about what skills you need to put into practice when you're supporting that organization. Very often you'll get specialized training and qualifications. So for example, the likes of community advice would put people through quite an expensive program of training through the law centre, I think provides it. Accredited qualifications and with the expectation that the person would be an advisor for X amount of time. Same thing with counsellor sort of roles, where they actually are very hard to get into, and they're quite strict for that reason, that the training is quite expensive and they need people to commit. So making a positive impact on your community that continues to be one of the main motivators, that people have identified this need and want to make a difference to those around them. And making new friends is very often something that we are approached by maybe those that have been isolated or new to the area, particularly newcomers. Said, right, we just want to meet local people. I'm quite isolated in this environment. Maybe want to practice English. Maybe I want to just meet people and understand a bit more about this culture that I'm living in. And that's something that we provide a lot of support to organisations and how to appeal to people and make sure that they're creating a welcoming environment. And that aspect there of having fun, yes, that is true for a lot of people, but it is often difficult. It's often hard work. But for the likes of our event volunteers, they keep coming back year after year because they make friendships and they have a really good time. The Balmoral show and events like that. Recently we had a video of one of our befrienders. Just said she had a great time with the older person that she befriended. He is unable to leave the house, and they have fun together. They have they play games. They have a bit of crack. They banter with each other and so on. So volunteering overall sort of can improve your physical and mental health and overall well-being. So how can volunteering improve my well-being? So I'm not going to dwell on this too long, but a lot of you will have seen or heard of Take 5, the public health agency's campaign that's been running for a number of years. Now, we would give specialised talks around this, particularly around volunteer wellbeing and things like that. But it's a good campaign for us because volunteering does hit all of these points, and I can show you how just over the next few slides. So in terms of giving, the Take 5 would say that the more you give to others and show kindness, you can improve your own well-being, your own sense, your own self-awareness, your own positive feelings of being rewarded for what you're doing, a positive experience that you've given to others. So roles like that could be a volunteer befriender, for example. And yes, we do provide that service. We're always looking for people in the Belfast area, but there are lots of befriending type roles out there, and they always need people. Keep learning. So as I mentioned earlier before, new skills can be on an ongoing basis. You might be invited to do, you might be on a program of learning with the organization, and if you're a volunteer first aider, for example, you would be continually updating and reflecting on your skills. You'd be assessed and things like that. So that's a very obvious one, but most volunteering roles will have an element of learning to it, even if it is just learning the organization when it's new to you, or learning about the people around you. So connecting to others, as I mentioned, a lot of people want to make friends. They want to provide support to somebody else, and it's about creating those networks. So again, our events volunteers are a good way of doing that. There are friendships that form of that. Haven't had any marriages yet, but there are friendships, there are relationships that quite naturally develop as people see each other time and again. Particularly in group settings, it's a good way to make new friends, connect to others, and understand more about different cultures, different people from backgrounds you might not naturally come into contact with. So in terms of connecting the others, volunteering is one of the more obvious ways of doing that. And this is around Take Notice. This is something that I've done a wee bit of training around Take 5, and what we would focus on is this kind of just focusing on being in the moment. You might be called to do something, active listening, or it could be that you're doing a particular task that you're focused on. You're not thinking forward or back. It's sort of similar to some of the principles of mindfulness. So for example, there would be a listening volunteer. You're just there in the moment with that person. You're not thinking about yourself. You're noticing things that they are saying. You're thinking about how you're going to react and provide some support to that person. Just you're there with them at that time, and you're given your own time and concentration to them. And being active, I suppose this is it naturally follows that volunteering will get people out of the house whenever they wouldn't normally be, particularly winter time. It's very hard to do that, of course. Um, but a sports coach would be an example of how you're more active. Youth centres, youth clubs, running after young people um, in those environments is one of the more obvious things to think about being more active. But that could be more active in your community as well, not necessarily just a physical thing. Although everybody will know that the more active you are and you exercise, things like that, helps improve well-being. So in terms of the volunteering role that is right for you, I would I would encourage people never to rush in. Really, try, there are good ways of sort of browsing what might be out there, but we would normally ask people, well, think back and think about your own sort of motivations. The why is more important than the how and the what and the where and so on. So we always, whenever somebody picks up the phone, we're like, well, but why would you like to volunteer? Because that can more naturally lead to a more informed decision that you would make about what you want to do. And be selfish around it. Think about your own motivation, think about your own needs, and being honest about that is brilliant. So some organizations love to hear, I'm going for a promotion and I would like some governance type experience. They go, oh, that's brilliant, we can absolutely involve you that way. We've got things that you can help us out with. So that's the main thing we would encourage people to do. Think about why they're doing, and then the what will naturally follow on. So the why would like to volunteer? Well, I don't know this area very well, so I'd like to meet people. So how would I do that, or what would I do? Well, I might join the local fair and help volunteer down there for a Christmas event or something like that. Um, and think about what you want to do. Is it going to be working outdoors with targeting a certain group? There's ones that you can rule out immediately. Maybe no interest in working with children, but for older people, that's maybe your thing. There will always be options out there for you.
Hey, how are you?
So how much time can I give and when? So this is the more practical sort of thing. So be realistic and don't overcommit. Some people go away with a lot of enthusiasm, and you can certainly apply for lots of different roles, and I would encourage that if you are using our website. But those are more for reasons to see who gets back to you for sort of thing, who's going to give you the best experience. So a few hours a week, a few hours a month, even once or twice a year is brilliant. There are short-term and long-term opportunities out there, and there always will be. It's very tempting to think you just have no time at all, and I'm sure that is true for many people. But it could be just that hour or two every few weeks, once a month. There are organisations who be able to accommodate you. And it's very hard to reflect, I think, for people what skills they have to offer. Some people are better than others at doing this. If you ask me what skills I have, it would take me a while to think of a handful of things. But if you're going to an organisation, with an offer, very often they can actually create roles around you. If they don't have it at that time, if you've got an exceptional talent, for example, they might go, right, okay, we're actually growing as an organisation. You would be really good in the background as helping us write funding applications, things like that. Or it could be a different skill that you bring to an organisation. You might be quite musical, but you join somewhere like chest, heart, and stroke, just to help facilitate sessions. But then you actually go on to deliver some sessions with them, and they'll usually tease out these skills with you. Okay for time, Owen, I think, are we? Yeah.
Yeah, still 15 minutes there, so.
Okay. So how do you find a volunteering role that suits you? So we do stand over how good our website is in terms of opportunities. We cover all of Northern Ireland. If you are in some parts of Northern Ireland have local volunteer centres who are separate to us, but we would advertise opportunities on our own website. So you can put in your location, and if you're just not sure, we always have these updated sheets for each council area under the Inspire Me section. I'm going to try and show you that in a little bit. I'll have to stop screen to do that in a wee second or two. But these are sent far and wide, so these sheets are updated minimum every few months, for busier areas like Belfast be every 6 weeks or so, and they're all on our website. The main thing to look at if you do want to find opportunities is going onto our website, which is volunteernow.co.uk. I think it is on the other slide, isn't it? Yep. And on any part of the screen, you'll see search for opportunities, but it's at the top as well. I'm going to do this wee bit at the end, I think, actually, if that's all right. You can search for keywords, causes, skills, or distance from home. So you can filter down what's going to be near you. And it should be fairly well. Well, there should be quite a few that are close to you. If they're not, perhaps you're in a more rural area, that it will be more limited. I'm not saying this is the be all and end all of what's out there, not by any stretch of the imagination. So again, just going back word of mouth and so on, different community centres, they might not be on here. If they are medium to larger organisations, they should have a presence on our website. And they just might not have something at that time. But there are, at any given time, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of roles on our website, and you can apply directly. You'll see this register to join, or if you search for an opportunity, let me see the next thing. Here we go. This is what you'll see if you click on one of those. It'll go to apply now. I'm just going to skip back because it says Be Collective here. That's the software program that our Volunteer Now website uses. So it will ask you to join and create a short profile, just your name, for if you're over 14, I think it is now, and email address, and that's really all you need. And then you can apply for opportunities. The organisation receives those applications and then takes it the next step with you. Sometimes there would be an additional element to do. They might want you to register on the website, but they'll usually get in touch by email or pick up the phone to you. So you can see this is just arts, culture, and heritage. Those sorts of rules, just as an example, taken by cause, and this will display like that. And then you'll see a bit more detail. This is quite a good example because quite a good hook about what the role actually entails. It's the organisation that puts these up. So they're the ones that are trying to entice people to hit the apply now on the right hand side there. So you'll see it has the postcode. It says what hours, flexible based on your availability. And then if you go through to the blurb about what the role is actually going to do. And then the benefits of doing so. So enjoy new experiences, learn new skills, join an enthusiastic and varied team. Very flexible and so on. Very often they'll say if there's an access NI required. That's important to know as well. Or it'll say whether they pay expenses or not. But it's always good to ask for expenses. If they have a policy in place. Very often organisations can't afford to pay mileage, for example, and they'll just be expected to make your own way wherever it is. But if you ask, they'll be able to tell you. A lot can and will, especially the medium to larger organisations. Okay, so this is what happens if you click apply now. So you'll just see once you've created a profile. Then once that's done, if you hit apply now, it just goes straight through. You'll not be asked to do very much there. It might just say, why are you applying to us? Or why would you like to volunteer with us? There's usually very little more than that to complete. Okay, if I have time, I will go back to the website just very briefly. People might have questions. So what do you expect when you apply for a volunteering role? We normally just say, and this does put a lot of people off, oh, that was a lot of bureaucracy, that was a lot of red tape to go through. Yes, very often if organisations are providing contracted services, they have to be very specific about who they recruit and demonstrate like an audit trail of who they are, sort of the details they would hold on them, might seem slightly odd to be asking, but it's usually there for reasons to help the organisation. So they might be asking you to fill in next of kin, because if you don't turn up, or you go missing, that's who they'll be contacting. There's an appointed person to do that. So there are reasons for these things, especially around training and that they need, your email addresses, they need to know and more about you. That's the modern world. Everybody, I think, realizes that. But if you're in more with those less formal roles, tend to not have as much of that. So you might not even fill in an application form if you're joining a local community centre to volunteer. Any medium to larger organisations definitely will, and it'll probably be online, but you can request paper. There might be an interview. It'll be it would be less formal than any professional interview, unless it's the likes of a board member role or something like that. Um, Usually an informal chat, very likely to be a panel of people. So there wouldn't be an awful lot of preparation needed. I suppose it's certainly nothing like compared to a normal paid position. They're really there just to find out that you're sensible, trustworthy, and you got the similar values and motivation for getting involved. An induction session really is there to help you feel competent and confident in whatever you're doing. Supervision is a very good thing to undertake. It's a chance for you to let them know if there's any issues, anything that you're going to find difficult, things that can be resolved, headed off at the pass rather than for problems developing later. And you might have to do some training. Very often that would be before you happen, or it could be ongoing training. Access, and I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time on. You might be surprised if you're asked to complete one. You might be surprised if you're not, and equally, because the threshold for Access now is actually quite high. We're an umbrella body for that. But if you're doing any of these regulated activities, then you will definitely be asked for an Access NI. The process is very, very quick if you're organised, if you have the things that you need. And you might be chased to do so because the organisation decide you can't do anything on site with us unless you've got your Access NI in place. That's very often the policy of the organisation. And then there's some organisations that don't require it. You think, I wonder why. It's because they've gone through line by line with Access NI and they've turned around and they said, no, you don't need this. This is a rule that doesn't require it. There may be some people deemed as vulnerable on site, but that's coincidental. You don't have contact with them. You're not providing any form of advice, regulated activities, social care, anything like that. Your role is purely is different. It's outside of that. It's always the role they think about. It's and to a lesser extent, the environment. So always the role is looking at first. What is the person actually doing? Rather than anything else. So it's a quick process once you get it done. Once you do your end, it will be quick. Okay. If you're having any difficulty looking at rules, then you can get in touch with us. I had my details at the start, but we're across all Northern Ireland. This is probably the best one to start with. You go on our website and log a query if you like. I think it can be just a couple of minutes, Owen, if that's okay. I'm going to just show the website here. Just go back and share my screen again. Okay, so this is volunteernow.co.uk. Just as a very quick aside, if people are part of an organisation themselves, are already volunteering, they'd like some advice, we've got publications that are very good for role descriptions. I'm just going to show this very, very briefly. Volunteer management. There's lots and lots of different things here that might be useful to help develop services, things like that. But the main purpose of today is really to show you searching for volunteer opportunities that you'll see here, but you can also get it there too. This might be a little bit slower because I'm sharing screen, so it does. The internet in my house sometimes gets a little bit slower than it should be. You'll see here the different that are up, and if we can sort it by newest, I'm sure some of these will be from today. Yeah, these are today, the last couple of days. The postcode, I'm just going to put my postcode in. I don't mind showing people that. So that's click on opportunities. I've gone by newest, or I can go by distance to me to load up. Okay, so that's about 500 meters from my house. Yeah, that's less than a mile, less than a mile, less than a mile. So it'll just depend where you are. A lot of people do look what's close to them. They want to travel for obvious reasons. But you can look at causes as well. You can actually filter down a wee bit further than that. So this is one I'm just going to highlight very, very quickly. Owen, I know I've got 5 minutes left. If anybody is organising employer-supported volunteering, if you look for team opportunities, okay, so these are the ones that we help facilitate. We'll put you in touch with the right people to get this organised. So Rosshill is a special school about half a mile from, not even actually, no, it's about 500 meters from here. And this is what they would like some help doing. So, and if anybody has any responsibility for that, you've maybe got a couple of days a year. The employer supported volunteering team opportunities is the thing to remember, and we do have a opportunity sheet on that as well. If you want us to be really involved with you, there is a charge. If you just want us to put you in touch with the right people and organize it yourself, that's totally free. And the only charge we would have is when you want us to do the risk assessments, you want us to do the impact reports, and you want somebody on site from Volunteer Now to help with that. There are other organizations that do something similar. Business in the Community, I think, is one. And it just has to go in, so you can apply now. I'm not going to do that because I'll take you through to my profile, but once you apply now, the organization picks that up. So I'm going to stop there. I think